Hi guys, it's Shanae and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm continuing my read along for ErHa Volume 3, and I just realized I forgot tissues. We'll see if I live to regret that. Yeah, okay. Hi! Um, so just a quick note, my parents are watching Pink Panther 2, and it's one of those older shows that has the dialogue quite soft and then the music quite loud, so it's very hard for them to like keep that at a good volume where they can hear, but also the music isn't overpowering. So if you hear that in the background, I'm really sorry, but I hope it's gonna turn out okay. We'll see. So I think let's hope I can just make it until the halfway mark, and then I will bring tissues back with me when I get back from the 10-minute break. We'll see. Hi. Um, but yeah. Also, can I just quickly show you guys because I'm so excited for it and like low-key a little bit nervous, but still excited. I finally got my volume 4, and it is stunning. And I'm so happy, and this looks like a much happier book. Whether or not that's the case, I have yet to find out. But just like considering the happy yellow color of it, I'm kind of leaning towards it maybe being a happier book. But then again, a part of me thinks volume 2 was sadder than volume 1, and that had like a happy yellow color as well. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But for now, we're on volume 3. So yay. Quick note as well for anyone who's new here, I have coffee and water with me, and also we do like a 10-minute break on the hour generally, or as close to the hour as I can manage, because we just kind of take it how it comes in terms of a good stopping point. And yeah, I think that's more or less it. If I'm forgetting something, sorry about that. I guess I should do like the YouTuber thing and be like, please like, it helps, it does help apparently, but I am not savvy enough even though it's been my job for 2 years. Anyway, okay, so let me quickly find the page. For anyone who wants to read along, we are on page, I think we're at the top of page 189, but let me just make sure. Um, I'm not 100% sure where we left off here. I'm just gonna take it from the top of page 189 just to be safe. Um, but yeah, I guess we can get started. Okay. Young master, let go of me, let go. Shimeng ripped his sleeve from Shimei's grasp. Sorrow and resentment flashed in his eyes as he glared unrelentingly at Moran. His voice was raw as he said, "What right do you have?" Moran's hand flinched slightly where he held the lantern, and his lashes drooped still lower. For a delirious instant, Moran half expected to hear Chuaning cut in with, "Shimeng, behave," as if he was still alive. It turned out that, all this time, Chuaning had been protecting him. Moran was the one who had taken it all for granted. Well, I'm glad he's starting to realize that. Moran didn't know what to say. He held desperately onto that lantern as if grasping a lifeline. Head still bowed, he repeated, "I want to bring him home." "Is that all you know how to say? You, that's enough." Shuzheju, Master Hua finally couldn't bear to watch any longer. He sighed. "Since Mo wishes to go, we should let him. If something really does go AWY, we can correct course then. But as of now, all is yet uncertain. There is no need for Shizun to be so antagonistic." I mean, that's his middle name where Moran is involved, but anyway. Um, Shimeng's expression was dark. He had more he wanted to say, but refrained himself out of consideration for Hua Jie. Yet it wasn't long before his restraint slipped again, and he growled out, "If anything happens to Shizun, I'll personally lay your corpse at his grave." Hua Jie sighed again. "Please settle your grievances some other day. There isn't much time left. Right now, our priority is to find the human soul." "Please begin, Great Master," said Moran. "The soul-catching lanterns have already been enchanted." Seeing Moran immediately move to light the lantern with spiritual energy, Hua Jie raised a hand to stop him. "Shuju, a moment." "Is there still something else?" Shimeng pressed impatiently. "This humble monk wants to be perfectly clear. If one of you should find Chuaning's human soul, you cannot back out of the journey to the underworld. This humble monk will cast a protection spell on you, but it is still horribly dangerous for a living person to enter the land of the dead. One careless move and you may not return alive." Those are pretty high stakes. Master Hua directed a solemn gaze at each of them in turn. "This is no idle threat. Locating Chuaning's earth soul in the underworld may not be difficult. The difficulty is in stepping into hell alone to face the unknown. If you're lucky, you'll find the earth soul quickly, but if you're unlucky and encounter any mishaps, then will die?" Shimei asked. "Death would be least of it, I'm afraid. If such a thing were to happen, both Chuaning and the Shushu who would be annihilated from the circle of reincarnation." "Great, love that for them." Hua Jie continued. "That's why, if there's any kernel of doubt in your heart, I recommend you return your lantern. No one in this world is obligated to die for the sake of another. There's no shame in valuing your own life. If you are unsure, there is still time to turn back." "I'm sure," Shimeng exclaimed, the most zealous and hot-blooded of the trio. I mean, the problem is, even though I agree with him that there is no shame in that, and it's better to admit it up front than to risk causing the final death of someone that you care about. But I think a lot of the times the peer pressure is so much that even if you know in your heart that the right thing to do would be to step away from the situation, whether or not you're actually able to do it under that kind of peer pressure and judgment is a different thing altogether. And apparently Shimeng's not gonna help this. "I'm sure," Shimeng exclaimed, the most zealous and hot-blooded of the trio. "Whoever backs out is a spineless chicken." "What a way to create a safe space, Shimeng," he added, and glared viciously at Moran. But Shimeng didn't really understand Moran after all. This cousin of his was nothing like him. Perhaps it was due to the endless humiliations he had suffered as a child that Moran's love and hate had been ground down into sharp claws. If someone hurt him, he would eviscerate them. But if someone treated him well, afforded him even the tiniest speck of kindness, he would never forget. I mean, we were told that before, so I'm not, I like that it's holding true. Moran shot Shimeng a sidelong glance before returning his gaze to Hua Jie. "I'm also sure." Hua Jie nodded. "Very well. When you reach the ghost realm, you must find his earth soul as swiftly as possible. Once the human soul and the earth soul fuse inside the soul-calling lantern, it will light your path back to the living world. At that point, this old monk will take care of the rest." Okay, that's great and all, but why is no one checking in with Shimei? Because he's the only one who hasn't been checked in on. He's the only one who stayed silent the most, and I'm worried. When you put it like that, it didn't sound terribly daunting, but all three were aware that every step of the process was uncertain and full of dangers, especially journeying into the underworld if Chuaning's earth soul couldn't be found, or if it was missing cognition or memories and would not fuse. Then whoever went down to find him would plausibly get stuck down there. Thus, before the three disciples lit their soul-calling lanterns, Huazue intoned it in a slow, solemn voice. Once the lanterns are lit, there is no turning back. This is truly no joking matter, so allow the humble monk to ask one final time. Are you absolutely certain? Once you begin, there's no room for regret. The three answered as one. No regrets. Good, good. A smile, half bitter, half gratified, spread slowly across Huajue's face. Xuaning, it seems you have been a better Shizun than I. Hello! Also, I just realized I never checked with you guys whether or not my audio is okay, so I'm just assuming and hoping that I haven't been talking to myself for the past 10 minutes. So, yeah. Anyway. Okay, great. Thank you. Um, okay. He recited the incantation silently, and the soul-calling lanterns flickered faintly twice, then lit. A pair of scarlet flames flared near simultaneously within the lanterns in Shimeng and Moran's hands, dyeing the white silk a vibrant red. A moment later, the lantern Shimei held also flared to life with a faint blue light, the color of the water elemental spiritual energy. Oh, okay. Slightly interesting, but okay. Go, Hajio said. Success and failure, return or no, all will be decided this eve. If we fail tonight, then, Hajio sighed. Moran thought of the care Chuaning had showed him when he was alive and felt a dull, throbbing pain in his heart. He couldn't bear to hear the rest of Huajue's words, so he said, the great master need say no more. Whether I have to kneel, crawl, or lay down my own life, I'll definitely bring Shizun back to the world of the living. As long as he's willing, as long as he's still willing to come back with me. The three halos of light set out individually for Loyalty Hall. Before long, each had vanished into the boundless dark. What a way to set a scene. Damn. Okay, let me just quickly, oh no, I just saw the chapter title for the next chapter, but let me just quickly take a, sip here. I'm intrigued to see if we're gonna have Moran kind of discovering all these secrets about Chuaning that he kept close to his chest before. And also, obviously, they mentioned that Chuaning would be missing maybe one of his senses or his memories. And I do wonder how that would be, because on the one hand, it would be interesting to see Chuaning without his memories for Moran to kind of realize how privileged he's been in getting a softer version of Chuaning without him having realized it, or if it's going to be another sense that would challenge the trust that Chuaning has in him in a different way. Chapter 104, Shizun's Wontons. Okay, just give me a second. I just need to quickly check out what is going on with my dog. I'm so sorry. Let me just mute it. Sorry about that. Okay, let's see. That's a good idea. Okay, I'm gonna mute it for like 2 more seconds and then I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. Let us try not to have any more interruptions. I love reactors' pets coming for the reading. I know Romania Black's dog and Brittany Diamond's cat make an appearance sometime too. Yeah, unfortunately that's not a possibility with Juliet because I would have to go get her and bring her, which I think I did during one of the previous, like right when we got her, I did it during one of the live streams. But I have to keep my door closed just to help muffle a little bit of the sound, for like just for my parents living. So yeah, unfortunately she is out of my room whenever I am filming for the most part. But yeah, like, and she's getting so big I can't pick her up. Well, I can still pick her up, but it's not gonna be that way for long. Okay, let's see. So we are, sorry about that, on chapter 104, Shizun's wontons. I'm stressed. A single lantern wound its way through Shizun Peak, seeking the fragments of returned soul. Once the soul-calling lantern was lit, Moran became invisible to the living. It was as if he was half a ghost himself. He climbed the blue stone steps and traversed the porticos and balconies, searching. Red Lotus Pavilion, Frost Sky Hall, the Three Lives platform. He looked everywhere, but Chuaning was nowhere to be found. Moran couldn't help but worry that his Shizun had grown weary of life and had no wish to see him in death. The thought made his blood run cold. He walked faster, the hem of his robe sweeping past the wild grass underfoot. Suddenly, he noticed a person standing at the end of Nai-Her Bridge. Of course, like if there's one place that he would be, it would be Nai-Her Bridge, because that was the one time he kind of had a good moment with Moran while they were at Shizun Peak, which is really sad. But yeah. Cool and aloof, woeful and forlorn. The palms of his hands broke out in sweat, and his heart beat like a drum in his ears as he ran towards the figure. Probably it's not him, like I've just been saying that, but Shizun. But the face that turned towards him belonged to a soul he didn't recognize. Probably a disciple who had perished at the heavenly rift. What of his face Moran could see was covered in blood, and he stared at Moran with eyes that were dull and confused. Sorry, I thought you were someone else. Moran stammered and hurried on. The soul had lost its cognition and only watched, stiff and motionless, as Moran passed in front of him. His corpse-pale body stood frozen in place, like a shell discarded and left behind in the mortal world. That's really sad, because I didn't realize he would basically be confronted with all of the lives he is choosing not to save, because obviously you can only save one person, and for him that one person is going to be Chuaning. Moran felt his chest grow tighter. What if his Shizun's human soul was also like that, a walking corpse? Even if he found him, would he be able to watch over him until daybreak? His heart beat a frenzied stampede as his feet moved faster and faster. Without knowing how he arrived, He looked up to find himself outside Nanka Hall. Chuaning didn't particularly care what he ate, so Moran doubted his returned soul would come here of all places. He was about to turn and leave when, from within the hall, he heard a soft sigh. No, please, I'm just clicking with the title. Please tell me that Chuaning wasn't like, I wanna make that for Moran before I go, like something to that effect. This was so quiet, but in Moran's head, it was like an explosion of thunder. He stumbled through the doors, and his hand shook uncontrollably as he lifted the soul-carrying lantern. The light of that lantern was like a new risen sun, warm yet mild, as it cast its glow on a white-robed figure. Moran's knuckles turned white and his nails dug into his palm. "Shizun," he muttered. The fragment of Chuaning's soul stood alone, a solitary figure in the emptiness of the large kitchen. His silhouette was faintly washed out, like ink blanched by the passage of time. But it was unquestionably him. He was in the same white robe of frozen mist, silk that he'd worn when he died, their hems stained red with blood. Against this conspicuous and vivid hue, his skin looked all the more pale, almost translucent, like smoke and mist, as if he might scatter before a gust of wind. Beautifully described. Please don't make me cry. Lantern in hand, Moran gazed at the mirage before him, like the image of flowers in a mirror, like the reflection of the moon in water. He wanted to walk faster, afraid Chuaning might slip away if he hesitated. He wanted to walk slower, afraid the dream might shatter if he hurried. 1,000 thoughts tied themselves into knots in his mind. Regret and guilt flooded his chest, and the rims of his eyes grew faintly red. He felt that he owed this man far too much. Moran slowed to a stop a short distance from him, too ashamed to show his face. The lantern swayed gently. Now that Moran was closer, he could see that Chuaning was bustling about. He looked slightly anxious, a little clumsy. What was he doing? Moran moved to stand behind him, thinking to help the pitiful soul. But what he saw struck him like lightning. As the shock began to fade, a burst of agonizing pain opened its bloody maw and tore viciously into his neck. Moran staggered back 2 steps, slowly shaking his head yet unable to speak. In that moment, had his chest been torn open and his heart ripped out, veins, flesh and all, it wouldn't have hurt so much as this. Am I ready? I don't think so. He saw Chuaning's hands, raw and bloody from clawing up more than 3,000 steps, carrying Moran while he still lived, feel their way carefully along the table. On that table lay flour, seasonings, and ground meat fillings. Nearby was a pot of water over a strong flame. It was already boiling, but Chuaning, that dummy, didn't even know he ought to lower the flames a little. The thick cloud of steam made everything hazy. Perhaps it wasn't the steam that blurred Moran's vision, but the tears pooling in his eyes. Chuaning's human soul was painstakingly folding wontons. His hands had ever been nimble and dexterous. Countless armaments, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, had been crafted by those slender fingers. Immense barriers had been conjured between those palms. But now, those hands, torn and marred, trembled as they carefully folded one full plump wonton after another. Moran raised an arm and scrubbed silently at his reddened eyes, unable to speak so much as a single word. Chuaning stood with his back to him. He seemed to finally remember that the water had been boiling for quite a while, and worried it would all boil away entirely if left unattended, began searching for the pot, feeling around with his hands. But he felt around with... Yes, he felt around with his hands. Okay, interesting. I was about to say maybe his hearing was gone, but maybe it's his sight? Moran surfaced from the anguish he was drowning in and hurried to Shizun's side. Now he understood. When the three souls split, each lost something: memories, cognition, parts of the body. What this soul had lost was a piece of its perception. This fragment of Chuaning's soul, returned from the underworld, could hardly see. His hearing seemed faulty as well. When he knocked something off the table, he couldn't quite tell where it landed. Even so, he toiled to make a bowl of ordinary, unremarkable wontons, as if this had been his favorite pastime in life, as if he found comfort in this haze of steam. Moran felt his heart might burst from the pain. The world spun dizzily around him. For a moment he couldn't even think, but stood frozen in place as the scene unfolded before his eyes. There was a crash. The soul, with its diminished vision, could barely see the table in front of him, and had accidentally knocked over Meng Hall's salt jar as he searched. It seemed to startle him. Chuaning silently withdrew his hand, and an uneasy expression appeared on his blood-stained face. "What do you need?" A hoarse voice, tight with choked-back sobs and shattered with guilt, spoke up next to him. "Let me help, okay?" I don't think he's going to be able to identify Moran, which is probably a good thing, unfortunately. Chuaning looked surprised, but perhaps his incomplete soul couldn't sustain such turbulent emotions. After a beat, he sank back into a placid calm, but every word Moran pushed past his lips was difficult and pleading. "Shizun, let me help you, okay?" Water roiled in the pot. In this kitchen, the dead person was warm and lively, yet the living one was distraught and listless. After a long interval, Moran heard Chuaning's familiar voice low, and even like the shattering of jade and the crumbling of mountains. "You're here?" A pause. "Yes." "Good. Just wait over there for a minute. When the wontons are done, take a bowl to Moran." He thinks it's Shizun, doesn't he? Sorry, not Shizun, Shimei. Moran froze. Chuaning's words made no sense at all. He watched Chuaning feel around blindly, then watched as he dropped the plump, snowy wontons one by one into the pot. In the haziness of the steam, his face lost its usual sternness. Instead, it looked very gentle. "I punished him too harshly yesterday." Oh, he's probably also missing some of his memories then. He said, "He probably hates me now. Shimeng says he's not eating. When you take these to him, don't tell him I made them. He won't eat them if he knows." I feel slightly gaslit, not gonna lie, because I think during one of the first streams of Volume 1 I said I thought maybe Shizun had been the one to make the wonton soup, but then there were so many things that just kind of pointed to that not being the case, because he was clearly so unused to making other things. So yeah, I feel very gaslit right now. Moran's mind was a mess. It was as if some secret that had slumbered half a lifetime had begun to stir, just about to break through the surface. "Shizun, Chuaning smiled dryly. I'm afraid I was too strict with him, but that rashness of his really ought to be tempered. Well, never mind. Fetch me a bowl for... Okay, there's a typo. Fetch a bowl for me, a thick one if you can. It's cold outside. We'll want to keep the food warm. Just about to break through. Just about to break. Please don't interrupt this realization. Moran seemed to hear the distant sound of something shattering. A memory finally clawed through its shell, screeching like a ghost as it burst forth and hurtled towards him. Everything went dark. Wontons, Shmei, Shizun. This was the first time he'd had Shmei's wontons. That day he had mistakenly plucked Madame Wang's precious flower and been punished by Chuaning. Tianwen had whipped him bloody and reduced his heart to ash. Moran had lain in bed, brooding and refusing to rise. He had plucked the flower because he wanted to give it to Shizun, but had instead been rewarded with a round of merciless lashings. Damn. He thought he must have been blind to take a liking to Chuaning, but his heart must have been covered in lard to think that Chuaning was gentle, or that Chuaning cared about him. That day, Shmei had come to his room holding a bowl of steamy wontons in chili oil. That soft voice, that gentle tone, and that warm bowl of wontons had turned all Moran's disappointments in a Shizun into fondness for Shmei. But how could he have known? How could he have known? The fragment of returned soul stood there beside him. Every human soul was different when it returned. Some were like Luo Xianxian, coming back to see what transpired after their death. Others were like the person at Naihe Bridge, senselessly wandering their former home, free of lingering cares or worries. Chuaning's human soul had lost its sight, couldn't tell one voice from another, didn't even know what day it was. He'd likely returned to the world of the living because he believed he'd done something wrong, had made a mistake, and felt bad about it, wanted to make up for it. Yeah, and the fact that he's making you wontons tells you who he feels he wronged. Which is freaking ironic considering that he saved your life, but... And so, in the end, Chuaning made a decision different from the one he'd made in life. He scooped the wontons out of the boiling water and nestled them in the bowl. The silvered scallions were a jade green. The broth was milky white, and the chili oil spooned over everything was red and spicy. He made to hand the bowl to Shmei, but at the last second he paused. I really was too unkind to him, he murmured. A few moments passed in silence. Never mind, you don't have to deliver it. I'll go see him myself and apologize. Moran stared blankly, his face ghostly pale. He had always believed his Shizun too cold, cold like iron, so cold it froze his heart to ice. How could he have guessed that Chuaning was actually so kind to him, that Chuaning's lingering regrets in the living world was him? Sorry, just give me a second. That his last wish was to apologize. The ice melted, turned into water, became an ocean. Slowly Moran lifted his hands and buried his face in his palms. His shoulders shook lightly. A heart like iron? A heart like iron? It wasn't like that at all. Moran's throat felt tight, and a sob escaped as he collapsed to the floor, kneeling before the soul that couldn't see him. The soul-calling lantern sat on the ground by his feet as he let out a broken wail, screaming himself hoarse as if he might cry blood. Finally, unable to contain it any longer, he bawled loud and miserable. He knelt before Chuaning. It wasn't like that at all. He grovelled in the dust, clutching the hems of Chuaning's blood-stained robes. It wasn't that your heart was cold and hard as iron. It wasn't that I was unyielding and immovable as stone. It was just that I misjudged you. I misunderstood you completely. It was just that. Shizun, Shizun, he wept, curling up on the floor. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Please come back with me. Shizun, please come back with me. I was wrong. It was my fault. I don't blame you. I don't hate you. It was all my fault. Always making you angry. Next time if you hit me or scold me, I swear I won't fight back. Shizun, if you just come back, I'll listen to everything you say. I'll respect you, I'll cherish you, I'll treat you right. But Chuaning's robes were gossamer thin, as if they might fall to pieces at his hands. Moran wished he could carve open his own chest and give Chuaning his heart, just to hear his heartbeat again. He wished he could drain his own blood to fill Chuaning's veins, just to see color in his face again. He would do anything to make up for his mistakes. Shizun, his voice broke. Let's start over from the beginning, okay? Okay, no, I'm crying too much right now. Where's mine? Whoops. Sorry about that. I'm really glad I remembered not to wear, what do you call it? Mascara. Are we still okay? I mean, I know I'm not, but are you guys okay? And we have a beautiful piece of art that I really wanted to get to before I stopped for a crying break, but we'll get to it now. No problem. Wontons is like another big word in the ErHa fandom. Yeah, I think it's giving, even though obviously it's not quite giving that because this is a romantic context, whereas the other one was a familial context. But it's very much giving me like Lotus. Was it Lotus Rib Soup? I think I'm misquoting it, but you know, from Model Zusha. Crying as well. This part always makes me cry. I'm so sorry. Okay. Shizun, his voice broke. Let's start over from the beginning, okay? Before the heaven-piercing tower, under the high-tongued tree, that Zhongshi, gentle as a white cat, lifted his head, and his phoenix eyes widened slightly. The cicadas on the branches chirped 2-3 times, and the youth before him grinned brightly. Shinjin, Shinjin, I've been waiting for you for so long already. Why won't you pay attention to me? In the blink of an eye, it had been 20 years, 2 lifetimes. It was all in the past already. He knew it was greedy and shameless, but he said it anyway. Shizun, let's start over from the beginning, okay? Please pay attention to me, won't you? And here is the beautiful artwork. Sorry, my brain just went like, what are words? Ta-da! I mean, tragic as all hell, but still really, really stunning. I hope you guys can see that well. Okay, chapter 105, Shizun's Human Soul. The lamp cast its bright light over two people. They were no longer at Mingpo Hall, but in Moran's room. Chuaning hadn't been able to see the road clearly, so Moran had led him by the hand. Chuaning was short 2 sols, unable to tell what day it was or even whose hand he held. He allowed himself to be pulled along in a daze. Moran led him into the room, wiping the tears from his own cheeks, and closed the door behind them. Chuaning set down the bowl of wontons he had carried the whole way. Then, feeling around, he approached the bed and asked softly, "Is Moran still asleep?" Moran watched him, unable to reply. When no response came, Chuaning assumed Moran was indeed asleep. He sighed. He seemed a little disappointed. Moran couldn't bear to watch, and on top of that he was afraid Chuaning might leave, so he sat on the bed and said, "Shizun, I'm awake." Hearing Moran call, Chuaning's brows twitched slightly, and he hummed in acknowledgement, but then he seemed to hesitate and fell silent. Moran knew Chuaning had a thin face. If he thought Shimei was here, Moran was sure he'd try to escape after a handful of words. Moran picked up a hair clasp from the table and tossed it towards the door so that it sounded like Shimei had left, and closed the door behind him. Then he asked, "What is Shizun doing here? Who brought you?" Sure enough, Chuaning was only half his soul, which was much easier to fool. He wavered. "Shiming Jing brought me." "Did he leave?" "He left." Another moment passed in silence. Finally Chuaning spoke. "The wound on your back." "The wound on my back is not Shizun's fault," Moran said softly. "I picked a precious herb without permission. I deserve Shizun's punishment." Chuaning hadn't expected him to say any such thing, and was taken aback. Why am I struggling so much? Sorry. His delicate curtain of lashes quivered as he sighed. "Does it still hurt?" "Not anymore." Chuaning raised his hand, those ice-cold fingertips seeking until they found Moran's face. Another pause. "Sorry. Please don't hate Shizun." The Chuaning of the past never would have spoken such tender words, but in death, as he thought back on all while his soul drifted in the underworld, he found that his only regret was the unkindness he'd shown his disciple. And so, given the second chance, those words that were once impossible to say tumbled out so easily. Moran felt like his heart was bathed in warm spring water. The hatred that had lingered after his rebirth, the old scars that had refused to fade year over year, his stubborn resistance, already on its last breath, all of it had crumbled to pieces now washed away by these heartfelt words of apology, leaving nothing behind. Yeesh. In the glow of the soul-calling lantern, Moran gazed at his Shizun's face. It was as if the blood-stains were gone, and a wisp of life seemed to come again into those pale cheeks. It was as if he were peering across the vast expanse of irreversible time to glimpse Chuaning's gentle countenance as it had been when Moran had first seen him. Without thinking, Moran lifted a hand to cover Chuaning's ice-cold fingers with his own warm ones. "I don't hate you," he said. "You're good to me, Shizun. I don't hate you." Chuaning stared blankly for a moment, then suddenly smiled. Though he was dead, though his face was smeared with dirt and blood, his smile was like the first melt of a stream frozen over, filling the room with the warmth of spring. His eyes were closed, but something seemed to glisten within his lashes. It was the brilliant smile of one whose final wish had been granted, proud yet reserved, radiant yet humble. Okay, but what happens if he accidentally grants Chuaning's wish, allowing the spirit to move on? Could that potentially be a problem? I don't know. It wasn't like the blooming of the most luxur- luxur- hmm, luxuriant, I do know how to say words, and steadfast high-tongued tree, countless blossoms like gentle, faint blushes, carefully dotting its dignified branches, beautiful and sweet-scented, scattering across the leaves like a sky full of stars. Frickin' amazing description. Tell me more. Moran couldn't help but lose himself in the sight. Never in 2 lifetimes had he seen Chuaning with such an easy and happy expression. Moran wasn't smart. He thought of saying a flower-like smile, but deemed it unfitting. Then he thought of a smile of 100 charms, but that seemed still more absurd. Though he racked his brain, he couldn't find the words to adequately describe the lovely vision before him. All he could do was sigh with feeling. How beautiful. This person was so beautiful. How had he never noticed? Moran was struck by some fortuitous inspiration. Shizun, he said, his voice hoarse. There's something I want to tell you. Hmm? I didn't know, I really didn't know how valuable Madame Wang's high-tongue flower was. When I picked it up that day, it was because I wanted to give it to you. Chuaning seemed surprised. Rand's voice grew yet softer, a little bashful, even a little helpless as he repeated, "It was for you. But why would you pick that flower for me?" Rand's face flushed despite himself. I don't know. I just thought that it was really pretty. He trailed off, vaguely surprised that he somehow remembered quite clearly how he felt when he picked that flower for Chuaning so long ago. Chuaning lacked 2 souls, was unbearably gentle, like a cat without its claws, all soft, docile belly and snowy, rounded paws. He patted Moran's head and smiled. Dummy. Guys, I can't deal. Because I don't know how long this is gonna last and I just want to enjoy it, but also it's so sad. Moran's eyes stung as he gazed up at him. He sniffled. I'm a dummy. Don't do it again. I won't do it again. Moran thought about how, after he'd lost hope in the past life, he had penetrated all manner of... Oh my word! Oh, I'm never gonna live that down. Oh my goodness. Oh no, I can feel how red I am and like the uh, like the camera's just confirming it. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Oh no, okay. Let me try and just compose myself here. Where was all manner of evil and terrorized others. He had so angered Chuaning that his Shizun finally gave up on him and tossed him that verdict that he had resented for a lifetime, vile by nature, beyond remedy. All 100 emotions welled up in his chest. Shizun, I promise from now on, I won't do anything to disappoint you. I'll be good. I won't be bad. He was hardly well read and didn't have any powerful oaths to swear or resounding vows to make. but he could feel the hot blood boiling in his chest as that pure and simple soul that he had once had as a child seemed to stir from its slumber. Shizun, this disciple is slow-witted, and only now realized how good you've been to me. His eyes were bright as you rose from the bed and knelt before Chuaning, bowing low. When he lifted his head, his voice was solemn and serious. From now on, I, Moran, will never bring disgrace upon you again. Sat side by side, the master and disciple had a long talk, though Moran did most of the talking. He was actually quite adorable when he set his mind to cherishing someone. Chuaning listened quietly, shaking his head now and again with a smile. Before they knew it, the sky outside the window had lightened, like water diffusing the rich darkness of Huazhe in, Huizhou in, I think. The long night was coming to a close. Master Huizhou stood by the stone bridge, the hems of his monk's robes wet from the spray of the water as it rushed past, yet he seemed not to notice it all as he waited in silence. The sun rose steadily in the east, the light of a dawn filtering through the leaves of the trees to strike the turbulent waters of the yellow springs, instantly gilding those racing currents with dazzling gold. The fine spray shimmered like the delicate scales of a dragon, and the light cascaded, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, across the water's surface as it billowed into waves, glistening and resplendent. Huizhou was presently in the void dimension, and would be visible only to he who had found Chuaning's soul. Shumei and Shumeng had both passed this way, but neither could see the old monk by the bank. From a distance, Huizhou appeared tranquil, but unconsciously he thumbed the string of prayer beads in his hand faster and more urgently with each passing moment. Please tell me they aren't having like such a good conversation that Moran has just totally forgotten about time, because that seems like a weirdly Moran thing to do. Without warning, the coils of prayer beads broke and scattered, and broody beads dropped like rain all over the ground. Huizhou's eyes flew open and he pressed his lips into a thin line. The color drained from his face. It was an ill omen. He stroked the fraying edge of the broken string and watched as the rolling waves tossed stray beads back onto the shore, and the beads on the shore rolled on into the water. He stared blankly for a spell, his face growing gradually paler. "Great Master!" someone suddenly called out to him, exuberantly. "Great Master!" Huizhou whipped round to see Moran sprinting towards him from afar. The soul-catching lantern in his hands glowed with both scarlet and golden light. As dazzling as those first rays of dawn had been, this young man's eyes were brighter still, gleaming like a pair of crystals. He screeched to a halt in front of Huizhou, his cheeks flushed, panting slightly, uncontrollably excited. "I found him." Moran brushed his disheveled bangs aside with one hand, keeping the lantern bearing Chuaning's human soul tucked snugly against his chest. "He wasn't unwilling to see me. He's in here." He pointed to the lantern in his arms, but then hesitated. He wanted to hand it over to Huizhou, but was also loath to part with it, and his hands extended only a couple of inches before drawing back again. Huizhou released a subtle sigh of relief and looked Moran up and down. "There's no need to give it to me," he said with a laugh. "Since you're the one who found him, you can keep him." Okay, he's just a subtle shipper, we appreciate it. goodness. Like, I know what he means, but still. So, very carefully, Moran continued to hold the lantern. Huaji took up the monk's staff he'd leaned against the tree and tapped it lightly against the water's surface. A jade green bamboo raft seemed to appear from thin air, a white cord tied to its curved bow. There's no time to lose. Please board. Okay, we are 2 minutes away from the hour, so because we are at a scene break, I am gonna take my 10 minutes now and then I will see you guys again at 8 past. Okay, we are back for another hour of stress, basically. We'll see how this goes. So, let me just quickly... I probably should have done this before I turned on the camera again. Sorry about that. But anyway... Okay. So again, for anyone following along, we were at the bottom of page 208. And I think we can basically just get started, right? It was common knowledge that the river that cut through Shizun Peak flowed to the ghost realm, but since there was a barrier between traveling to the underworld traveling to the underworld wasn't a simple matter of floating downstream. Master Hua's bamboo raft carried an enchantment that allowed it to pass between yin and yang, and thus, after sitting alone on the raft for half a day and sailing many miles, Moran came to a waterfall. The waterfall to the underworld. Dun dun dun. This waterfall bridged the infinite cosmos above and the deepest reaches of the hell below. Oh, this waterfall bridged, not bridge, the infinite cosmos above and the deepest reaches of hell below, with no defined boundaries and neither beginning nor end. The water thundered down in great cascades, and the spray of droplets sent up a foggy mist. Moran hardly had time to take in the sight. In moments, the bamboo raft had carried him straight towards that curtain of rushing water, as massive as a prehistoric beast. Before he could react, the powerful streams were upon him, like countless blades poised to tear through flesh and bone. Shizun! Amidst the danger, Moran only thought of the soul-calling lantern cradled in his arms. He held it tightly against his body to shield it, never once losing his grip. Even as he was drawn into the raging whirlpool, all was dark, stormy chaos. Okay, that was a very, very short scene, but I get why. Moran didn't know how much... Why am I struggling? Moran didn't know how much time had passed when the deafening sound of the waterfall vanished along with the knife-like deluge. He opened his eyes slowly and only let out a breath of relief after confirming that the soul-calling lantern was safe and sound. When he finally looked up, he was stunned speechless by the sight before him. The waterfall traversing the realms of yin and yang were nowhere to be seen. The bamboo raft now drifted gently on the surface of a vast and tranquil lake. Its deep blue waters flowed with specks of starlight, and wisps of half-seen souls swarmed in its currents like shoals of fish. Reeds flourished along its shores, blooming with lampant flowers, and that drifted to and fro in the breeze. And I again forgot to check if the audio is okay. From the depth of the reeds on either bank came the voices of a man and a woman lifted in song. The notes floated out as if from a dream, sorrowful yet serene. My body into the tremendous abyss, limbs ground to paste, my skull into the open world, eye sockets sunken to dust. Scarlet ants devour my heart and vultures tear my guts. Only the soul returns, only the soul returns. Well, that's pleasant. Green waters of the yellow spring flow east, and the past is gone, never to return. Moran drifted on the bamboo raft for some time, until a great gateway reared up into the heavy darkness of the night, towering into the black sky. Once the raft drew closer, he could see that the enormous structure. My brain has gone to dust, apparently. The enormous structure was majestic in scale and covered in fine, exquisite details. It stood in the dark, as it had for time immemorial, like a massive beast of gold and jade adorned with amber pearls. The splendid, treacherous beast crouched with its bloody, putrid maw open wide, ready to welcome untold numbers of lonely souls and lost ghosts into its gullet. It's a terrific image. Closer. The sinister torrents were like fangs that could pierce the sun, and the whole structure was like the imposing head of a behemoth lying in wait to swallow the grievances of the world. Even closer. The piece of churning soul in the lantern seemed to grow nervous, its golden glow pulsing and swaying. It's all right. Moran sensed the soul's unease and hugged the lantern tight. He leaned in, his lips nearly brushing the silk, and whispered soothing words as he channeled more spiritual energy into the lantern to keep running company. Don't be afraid, Shizun. I'm here. The light quivered for a moment, then settled back into a steady glow. Lowering his thick lashes, Moran peeked into the lantern and couldn't help but chuckle. He reached out and caressed its edge, then hugged it tighter. In the darksome night, the words Ghost Gate were writ large and bold. A shrinking... What are words? As striking and vivid, as if newly inscribed each day in the fresh blood of the living. Oh great, we love that. The bamboo raft reached the shore and Moran set foot on the road to the underworld. The very ground was unnaturally saturated with the smell of blood. As he walked, more and more people appeared around him, men and women, old and young, even wailing infants who had died almost as soon as they'd been born. Oh, that's sad. All of them drifted towards the inner reaches of the underworld. It mattered not whether in life they had been emperors, generals, or ministers with riches and splendors untold, or the commoners and peasants without a penny to their name, nor with how much money or what goods they had been buried. In this time, in this place, all were compelled to travel to the final road alone. Moran followed the swarming crowd of souls to the entrance of the ghost realm. At the gate sat a man fanning himself with a palm leaf fan, a soldier, judging by his clothes. He had died with his stomach sliced open, and his intestines spilled out from time to time. So pleasant. The gatekeeper used the fan's handle to shove his organs back in with an air of impatience, then glanced up lazily to interrogate the newly deceased souls before him. Name? Son Arwu. How'd you die? Oh, this is going to be an issue. I died of old age. The gatekeeper picked up a large stamp and carelessly stamped an underworld entry pass with the words, "Died of old age." He handed it to Son Erwul. Don't lose it, or you'll have to go to the 17th hall to apply for a replacement. You can go. Next. Oh, the bureaucracy of death, oh my word. Son Erwul was extremely nervous. In fairness, any newly dead person, regardless of how valiant or knowledgeable they'd been in life, would probably be the same. Am I going to be put on trial? I'm a darn good person. I ain't never killed so much as a chicken in my life. Just wondering if I can maybe get a better lot in the next one, or at least have enough money to get me a wifey. The fact. But he said wifey. The real hell, bureaucracy? Exactly. Oh no. The old man prattled anxiously on and on. The gatekeeper, quickly tired of his babbling trial, he waved a dismissive hand. That's still a ways off. There are so many souls here in the ghost realm. It'll take at least 8 years to get through the reincarnation queue, if not 10. Just hang around and wait your turn. It's not much different from the living world, save all that about chickens and wifeys for the Lord Judge when the time comes. Next, son ErHa was dumbfounded. 8 or 10 years? He stammered in his thick accent. A few heads back in line, Moran was equally shocked. What? It takes that long to get judged for reincarnation? Just be happy, it means you probably have more time, okay? Of course. Though it's a different story if you're truly reprehensible or have something weird going on with your soul. The gatekeeper snickered maliciously at his own comment. The movement made his intestines slip out again, and he had to pause to stuff them back in. The ones destined for the 18 hells never have the time to wait long. Moran gaped at him. The dense half-wit's son ErHa had more questions, but the gatekeeper's patience was at an end. He shooed him off, saying, go on, away with you. You're not the only one waiting to get reincarnated, you know. Don't hold up the line. Next! Sorry, that was a bit loud. Thus, son ErHa was driven off with a wave of the guard's palm leaf fan. The next person in line was a young woman with her pretty face skillfully made up. When she parted her lips to speak, the lines of her gaze bespoke the poise and coquetry unique to a certain profession. I'm assuming prostitution, because otherwise why would you be vague about it? My lord, she said in a soft voice, this humble one is called Jin Hua. I was beaten to death by a brutish villain. The ghosts took their turn at the front of the line, and each had their own thoughts and manners of death. There was a few sights more bustling and jumbled than this. Every chaotic facet of life seemed to be represented here. Amidst this crowd, Moran held the lantern in his arms as close as he could. He owed his Shizun. He didn't care about anything else. All he cared about was finding the last piece of Chuaning's soul. Name, the gatekeeper yawned. He lifted his eyes to peer at Moran. Moran was just about to answer when the man quavered, as if he'd sensed that there was something off about the young man. He abruptly stood to stare intently into Moran's face. Moran mentally cursed. He had already died once. What if there was something odd about his soul? That's a fair point. Honestly, this part was so exciting. This image of the underworld afterlife. Yeah, I'm very much getting like Percy Jackson flashbacks in a way, but I kind of just love it. This idea that the underworld is like half just a very boring place, if that makes sense. Uh, mm, Not to mention, he was currently holding a piece of someone else's soul, which was pretty questionable in itself. But there was only one entrance to the ghost realm, so he had no choice. Moran braced himself and met the gatekeeper's gaze squarely. The man narrowed his eyes. Moran feigned a calmness he didn't feel and gave his name. Moran. I'm not gonna give like a surname or anything, just Moran, but okay. The gatekeeper waited. Moran's heart thundered like a drum as he willed his expression to remain steady. I had a chi deviation and died on the spot. I'd like to enter an entry pass, please. Okay, but Moran, isn't your past transgressions kind of like gonna send you directly to the judgment table for the 7 hells? I'm just vaguely concerned, you know? Okay, fair. Moran has the surname. Hopefully they don't recognize him as being that Moran. Okay, chapter 106. Shizun, where are you? Died from chi deviation? The gatekeeper repeated his words back slowly, then humphed. You a cultivator? A cultivator and you're down here at your age? How very unfortunate. The gatekeeper smirked unkindly. Many ordinary people didn't have the good karma to be born with the foundational aptitude for cultivation, so mocking cultivators amounted to a case of sour grapes. Interesting, but also worth noting that he seemed to sense something off with Moran, but he didn't, it seems, recognize Moran. So there's something different than just, oh, you know, this is Moran and I need to be worried or something like that. Yeah, no, definitely. You know, your soul looks kinda iffy to me, like it's tainted. Interesting. Master Hua had placed an enchantment on Moran meant to cover up his living sense and allow him to interact with souls. Thus, while there was certainly something peculiar about this young man, the gatekeeper couldn't immediately put his finger on it. He sat back down and crossed one leg over the other, then rummaged around in a drawer. He extracted a pitch-black ruler. Sun measuring ruler. Oh great, this is gonna be a disaster. I need another pillow. He said smugly, though it wasn't clear what he was so smug about. The ruler wasn't even his. But with some people, the less important their position, the more it pleased them to put on airs. The gatekeeper slapped the ruler down on the table and raised his eyes to stare at Moran. Stick your hand out. This lordly one's gonna measure your merit in life. Oh great! Please tell me he miraculously has a weird amount of merits. Moran stared, speechless. His merits in life? If they measured that, wouldn't he get chucked directly over to Lord Yanluo to be ground into dust? But with so many eyes watching and nowhere to run, he had little choice. He exhaled, then shifted the soul-calling lantern into one hand and extended the other. The gatekeeper made to place the ruler against the inside of Moran's wrist, but the very instant it made contact with his skin, the ruler screeched shrilly. Globules of blood dripped from the pitch-black body, and the weeping and wailing of thousands filled the air. I will not rest in death. May you never be allowed to reincarnate more. Oh, great. Well done on just blurting out his identity like that. More here. Dad, Mom, you... I'm not gonna say that. Why? Don't kill me. Please don't kill me. Moran jerked his hand back, his face devoid of color. The assembled ghosts were all staring at him, and the gatekeeper stared with the most inscrutable of all. He eyed Moran with a gaze like a fierce beast, then bent his head to look down at the ruler. The red glow had faded, and the dripping blood was also gone, as though it had been a hallucination. The surface of the table now perfectly clean. But on the ruler, a line of characters slowly appeared. Sins beyond redemption, sent to level... Which level of hell? I'm stressed. I'm very stressed, and also, like... What a way to be faced with the sins of your past. because I think it's one thing to like make peace with your death and, you know, then go on to face the sins of your past, but now he's kind of like not there for that. And now it's like, yes, look at all the damage you've done and possibly bear the consequences for it. Moran had pulled his hand back before the sin measuring ruler could finish its work, so the rest was left off. Oh great! The gatekeeper yanked Moran's arm back, and his eyes locked onto him like a restless predator who had finally caught a whiff of a rare prey. His nostrils flared, and a strange light flickered in his eyes. Half his intestines had slid out again, but this time he didn't bother to shove them back in. I do wonder if, like, because that was the sins of his past life, that, like, when the measuring stick measures it again, whether or not it's going to reflect the merits of this life and thus confusing the gatekeeper completely. Hold still while I retake the measurement. His face was impatient and greedy, as if he was already picturing himself claiming commendations from Yanluo. His ghostly claws dug into Moran's wrist as he hauled him over, and his expression was practically unhinged as he slapped the sin measuring ruler against Moran's wrist once again. Catching a ghost meant for the 18th hells would be a great feather in his cap. He'd be promoted by at least 3 tiers then and there, and could say goodbye to the tedium of sitting at the gate recording the comings and goings of the morass of souls. A proper measuring this time. The sin measuring ruler lit up again. Just as before, blood streamed from its black surface and screams filled the air. It was as if every person Moran had ever killed and all the sins he had ever committed were crammed into the small black rectangle. The sheer magnitude of resentment overwhelmed the little thing almost to bursting. I hate Moran. I'll never let you go off, even when I'm dead. Moran was becoming more and more distraught. He lowered his lashes and pressed his lips tightly together, something unreadable in his eyes. You have no conscience. You've turned this world into hell. I'll haunt you when I'm dead. Weeping, wailing, cursing, hating. Then suddenly, amidst those clamoring voices, a soft sigh. I'm sorry, Moran. It was this master's fault. The frickin' final nail in the coffin. His eyes flew open, full of grief and sorrow. Once again, he heard those words from his past life, the ones Chuaning spoke on the verge of death. They were so gentle, so sorrowful, but they cut into his skull like a knife, as if they would cleave his soul apart. The voices slowly faded to nothing, and the sin measuring ruler fell silent. A line of characters appeared again. Sins beyond redemption, sent to level. Moran didn't pull away this time, but the writing still didn't finish. The gatekeeper blinked, then tapped the black ruler a couple of times. I'm guessing it's probably because he isn't dead, so his story is still unconcluded, his merits are still unconcluded. The gatekeeper blinked and tapped the black ruler a couple of times. Is it broken? The ruler quivered a little from the taps. Then, unexpectedly, the words disappeared. A thin layer of celestial haze rose from the ruler's surface, and it glowed with a brilliant radiance. This time, there was no weeping or wailing. Instead came music like a melodious birdsong drifting between clouds, as if the most elegant chords of the 9th heaven had descended into the underworld. The crowd of souls were entranced, and even the gatekeeper found himself mesmerized. Only when the celestial music ceased did the gatekeeper finally come to his senses. When he checked the sin measuring ruler again, it bore the words, "Everything normal, allowed to pass." Vaguely concerned about the ruler and its agenda, but okay. Gatekeeper cried. What had happened to the sins beyond redemption a moment ago? Why was it everything normal now? In disbelief, he gave it several more tries, but it was the same every time. First souls of screaming, then beautiful music, and finally, without exception, everything normal, allowed to pass. The gatekeeper was bitterly disappointed, but he had no grounds to block the normal soul from entering the underworld. He shoved his intestines spitefully back into his abdomen and clicked his tongue in displeasure. That's some chi deviation you had, all right. Moran was just as surprised. He hadn't the least idea what was happening either. After a bit of thought, he concluded that Master Hua's enchantment must have confused the ruler. That makes sense as well. He sighed in relief. Take your damn entry pass and get lost. You're wasting my time. Beat it. Moran was more than happy to oblige and had turned to leave with the soul-calling lantern in his arms when the gatekeeper's eyes suddenly lit again and he yelled, "Hang on. Please tell me he's not going to assess the soul-calling lantern. Please tell me I don't have anything to worry about." Like, don't spoil. I'm talking to myself. He was carrying Chuaning soul in the lantern. Maybe that overpowered the ruler. That could also be it. Like, I was definitely wondering if maybe that was the case. Though obviously it's underworld physics, so I'm not quite clear on how it all works. Moran kept his expression neutral, but his heart began to race. Feigning exasperation, he asked, "What is it now?" The gatekeeper jerked his chin towards the lantern. "What's that you've got there?" "Oh, this?" Moran's hand stroked the lantern as the gears in his head whirled rapidly. He turned around with a smile. "It's my burial item." "Burial item?" "Yeah, it's a magical relic." "Huh. Well, isn't that interesting?" The gatekeeper pointed to the table, his eyes flashing. "Put it down there and let's measure one more time. Your magical relic was probably interfering with the ruler." Damn. Moran roundly cursed this idiot in his head, but held his tongue. He could do nothing but set the lantern down and stick his wrist out once again, with some apprehension. The gatekeeper seemed quite confident this time. He eagerly swung the ruler into place once more, but the result was the same. Thank goodness. Words appeared, clear as day. Everything normal, allowed to pass. Moran was just as confused as the gatekeeper, but with that, the man finally gave up for good and waved him away lazily. Moran didn't dare linger a moment longer. He picked up the soul-calling lantern, hugged it to his chest, strode down the lengthy pathway. As he stepped out, the quality of the light suddenly changed. Okay, so I had a note here that just said the Chinese word for burial item was pei zhang. Item buried with the dead men to go with them to the afterlife. Okay, where are we now in terms of time? We still have a little time left. The ghost realm unfolded before his eyes. The first level of hell stretched into the distance with no end in sight. The sky was the scarlet of a sunset on fire, and all manner of strange flora sprouted from the ground. Rows of uneven roof tiles sprawled across the immediate skyline, and palatial structures lined the horizon. On a monolith at the entrance was engraved the words, "Thy flesh returns to dust, thy soul to Nanka town." The red painted gateway that towered next to it bore the words Nanka Town, carved and gilded upon it, each character the height of a grown man. Oh wow, okay, that's intense. It seemed this was the name of the first level Hao. All of the deceased, assuming there was nothing extraordinary about them, would cool their heels here for 8 to 10 years until summoned to the second level for the judgment of the underworld, at which point they would stand trial and receive judgment. That's interesting because I feel like if there are people who get preference for the line because they've done a lot of bad, are there people who get preference for the line because they've done a lot of good and thus there's a bigger time limit than we know at the moment? That's just like a little bit of a concern that I have. Would cool their heels here for 8 to 10 years until summoned to the second level for the judge of the underworld, at which point they would stand trial and receive judgment. Moran peered as he walked, cradling the soul-calling lantern in his arms. As far as he could tell, the layout wasn't much different from a regular town in the living world. There were roads, residences, and even shops. He counted 18 streets in total, 9 running from north to south, and 9 from east to west. The souls of men, women, and children went about their business, some laughing, others weeping. It was truly a gathering of ghosts. Moran heard a newly deceased woman sobbing from the east side. What do I do? What do I do? Everyone says remarried women are cut in half and divided between their 2 husbands. Is it true? Can anyone tell me if that's true? That's a horrifying thought. Oh my word. Beside her, a girl with disheveled clothing and tangled hair wiped the tears from her face. I didn't want to do that kind of work, but how else could I make a living? When I was still alive, I tried to atone for my sins. I went to a local temple to donate a threshold to be stepped on as people came and went, but the village chief demanded 400 gold to swap out the threshold. If I had that kind of money, I wouldn't have sold my body in the first place. Over on the west side, a man was counting 401 days, 402 days, 403 days. He agreed to die together for love, but I've been down here for 404 days already and she still hasn't followed. Oh, the drama and the tea. That's patriarchy for you. Indeed. And unfair since the men tended to marry more than one woman if they could afford it. I mean, yeah, like the emperor especially. Could you imagine the insult the emperors would feel if they were told that they would be cut into pieces for every single person they married? I think they would change that expectation really quickly. But anyway. She's so delicate. Maybe she got lost on the way down? If she really did, what will I do? I feel bad for the poor guy. These freshly dead souls mulled about in Nanka Town's gate, at Nanka Town's gate, crying and muttering, lingering and protesting. Farther in were the older ghosts. They had already been back to the living world and resigned themselves to their circumstances. These ghosts were more how do you say that word? Equanimous? And each had taken up some livelihood to occupy their time while they awaited trial. But the third street, things were as busy and bustling as any market in the living world. These were all souls not yet severed from their mortal lives after all. They had not yet drunk Mengpo's soup of forgetfulness, and though ghosts were still nigh indistinguishable from ordinary humans, those who had been entertainers in life busked at the sides of the streets. Those who had been seamstresses still wove clothing. Only now they used the clouds of hell. Butchers dared not kill any more, but could at least sharpen knives and scissors. Sounds of peddling and cheering rose and fell, lively and energetic. Moran stopped in front of the ghost, selling calligraphy and paintings. The ghost was stick thin and sickly, with jutting cheekbones and a hollowed-out stomach. He probably hadn't managed to sell a single painting in his entire life, and literally starved to death. Damn. When he saw that someone had sat down at his booth, the skinny scholar looked up. His eyes were bleary, but his expression did not lack for passion as he said, "Gongzi, looking to buy a painting? I want you to draw me a portrait." The scholar was woeful. Paintings of people can hardly compare to the artistry of landscapes. Take a look at the painting of Mount Taishan, draped in misty clouds. "I don't care for landscape paintings," Rand said. "I just need you to draw someone for me." "Don't care for landscape paintings?" The scholar shot him one glance, then another, displeased. It said that the kind know to appreciate the mountains, and the wise know to cherish the waters. Gongzi is still so young. You really ought to absorb some culture, smell some ink. As it happens, I would rather not part with my mountain Taishan painting, but since you had a good taste to stop at my booth, surely you have some good sense to go with it. How about this? Just for you, I'll drop the price to, I want you to draw a person. The scholar fell silent. I'm wondering how he's going to be able to draw a portrait of Shizun just from Chuaning's description. I mean, it's possible, but people who can paint and people who can do like facial reconstruction paintings or illustrations aren't like one and the same necessarily. So I just kind of am worried about that. I get that he's like, I want to be able to show people what the person that I'm looking for looks like, which is smart. So he has a brain cell. We appreciate that, but I'm a little worried. Oops, sorry. The two stared each other down. The scholar, of course, was no match for Moran, and folded in no time. This made the man so mad his dead face seemed to flush. "I don't draw people. If you really want it, it'll be 10 times my normal rate. Things cost money even in the ghost realm. I mean, I'm not surprised by that, but the question is, what does it cost?" Moran wondered aloud. "Paper money burnt by friends and family, yes," the scholar replied coldly. "Money makes the world go round. Though I myself disdain riches, a gentleman earns his money through honest work. We are neither friends nor family, nor do we have a sympathy like the legends of Boya and Ziqi. So what reason would I have to do you any favors?" He nattered on and on in this vein. Moran's book knowledge was limited, and he was completely out of his depth. He could only frown and say, "I just got here. No one's burned any money for me yet. No money, no deal." Moran thought it over and hit upon an idea. He pointed at the Mount Taishan painting. "All right, no deal. But I'm bored and have nothing to do, so could you tell me something about landscape paintings?" The scholar paused. At once, all his anger turned into delight. "You're interested in landscapes? Does it cost anything to learn from you?" Moran nodded. "Nope." The scholar was quite conceited, and the way his face lit up was faintly ridiculous, yet also pitiful. "Knowledge is free. Money would only foul it. Scholarly matters mustn't be tainted by such material concerns. Tell that to every single educational system ever. But sure. Moran nodded again and thought to himself, so that's how the little bookworm starved to death. Hard as it was not to laugh, the man was rather pathetic. Unfortunately, Moran truly was penniless right now, or he really would have given him some silver. The scholar took the painting from its frame with great excitement, struck a pompous pose, unnecessarily cleared his incorporeal throat, and then, in a tone both anxious and snobbish, said, "Let us begin." Watching the little bookworm take the bait, Moran smiled broadly. "Please, do enlighten me." "You know what? This is just a..." Never mind, I confused the books for a second there. I thought for a moment there was someone who had died recently who we could maybe rely on to help Moran, like if he accidentally found his soul just wandering around here. But I think I might have confused him with one of the characters from Scumberland, my bad. So just forget me trying to be smart. Okay, where are we now? 10 minutes left. We can try and do like 4 more pages, right? We're at chapter 107, Shizun's portraits. Once the scholar hit his stride, he prattled ceaselessly for 4 incoherent hours, all Confucius this and Mencius that, and quite over Moran's head. It made Moran's head spin and his eyelids grow heavy, but he still had to feign interest. Not an easy feat, to be sure. However, when it came to faking attentiveness in lessons, Moran was highly skilled. First, he'd start with an O, paired with a furrowed brow, as if confused or unconvinced. He'd let them talk a while, then try an O, and relax his brow to create the impression of dawning comprehension. Some minutes later, he wouldn't forget to open his eyes wide and make them sparkle. Then go, "Oh," to show he'd gained new insight and understanding thanks to his teacher's brilliant guidance. I feel vaguely called out. Moran had applied these 3 O's liberally throughout Chuaning's lessons. Unfortunately, Chuaning never fell for it. He merely looked at Moran with cold eyes and told him to shut up. The little bookworm, on the other hand, had certainly never met with such an attentive listener in his life, and by the end his eyes were practically glowing. So delighted was he that his previous reservations and haughtiness evaporated, and he now only wished dearly that he'd met Moran sooner. The poor guy. I kind of feel bad for him. But also I need a little bit of tea because my throat is going. Oh my goodness, that's why he never learned anything? I love how he knew Chuaning didn't fall for it, and yet he probably persisted in that very same tactic over and over again. Okay, I'm unfortunately gonna have to cough, so sorry about that. Sorry. I'm just being very noisy today. I understand now, Moran said with a smile. Now that I've heard what you have to say, I can see that this painting is truly a priceless masterpiece. Had the little bookworm been alive, he would have undoubtedly have blushed bright red. But even without the telltale flush, his excitement was obvious. He was so elated that he hardly knew what to do with his hands or where to put his legs. The scholar beamed like a little kid, his gaunt face alight. That makes me really sad. Moran had never seen such a happy ghost. That should do the trick. Moran rose and bowed respectfully. It's getting late, he said. I'm going to go look around a bit more and find some place to stay. If the professor isn't too busy, I'll come again tomorrow. The scholar's smile grew even brighter at being called a professor out of the blue. He was half ecstatic and half panicked as he hurried to demur. No, I'm no professor. I sat the exam several times, but in the end I didn't even pass the county level test to qualify as a Shitai. Shitai is the title of someone who's passed the county lowest level of imperial examination system. Okay. Where was I before that? He trailed off with a sigh. Moran smiled. The depth of one's knowledge is measured not by titles and ranks, but by the content of one's heart. I mean, true, because he was Ta Xianjun at one point and he very decidedly had no knowledge at that point, so fair. The scholar was shocked. To think that you were actually capable of such eloquence. It's something my Shizun said once. I'm just lending his words. The scholar paused for a long beat. Borrowing his words? Oh, is that how it goes? Huh. Moran scratched his head. I remembered wrong again. It was growing late and the scholar was unlikely to get any more customers. He began to pack up his case and pouches. I'm pretty free myself, he said, and it's not every day I hit it off so well with someone. Though it's said that friendship between gentlemen is light as water, it's also said that when meeting friends over wine, 1,000 cups is too few. So I say, Moran swiftly cut him off before he could spew any more scholarly ink. Let me guess, he said with a smile. It's getting late, how about we go for a drink somewhere? Ah yes, that's right. Some wine is to lift the spirits. Spirits? And there are ghosts? I'm sorry. It's fine. My dad jokes just want to grab onto that. How about it? Sounds good, Moran nodded. Professor's treat. The scholar was completely speechless. Oh no. The greasy little table supported a measly plate of a dozen or so scattered peanuts and 2 cups of wine scarcely half full. A single dingy candle was the tavern's only source of light, and behind the counter the sly-looking proprietor wiped the cracked bowl. It's a bit shabby. The scholar seemed a little uneasy, but I never really got any paper money, so I've only been to a couple of places. This one's the most possible of the lot. It's fine. Moran picked up the wine cup and looked it over thoughtfully. Do ghosts eat? It's all fake. Works like offerings. The scholar popped a handful of peanuts into his mouth, but the amount on the plate remained unchanged. See? He explained. Like this, it's just for the flavor. Moran calmly sat down his cup of wine. He wasn't really dead. If he ate, he would get busted. Yeah. 3 rounds of wine later, the scholar had shaken off his earlier despondency. He chatted with Moran about this and that, then asked, Morgongze wanted me to draw someone's portrait earlier. Is it a lover? Well done for picking up on that, even if it's not quite right. Moran frantically waved a hand. No, it's my Shizun. Ah, the scholar seemed surprised. I've been doing business down here for many years. I've had people come to me looking for paintings of beauties, but this is the first time someone's asked me to draw their Shizun. Is this Shizun of yours good to you? Weighed down with guilt, Moran said, yes, he's very good to me. No wonder then, the scholar nodded. What do you want a drawing of him for? To find him. Ah, the scholar looked surprised. He's in the underworld too? Moran replied. I heard that the deceased stay here in Nanka town for 8 to 10 years. I'm worried about him, so I want to see if I could find him and keep him company. The scholar didn't doubt him in the least. In fact, he was rather moved. He mulled it over, then sighed. Such devotion is hard to come by. All right, Mogongze, I'll do it for you. As he spoke, he got up and opened his case to retrieve his drawing tools. Is he going to be able to do an okay job of it while he's drunk, though? I say as if I know whether or not they can get drunk on the flavor of wine. Moran was overjoyed. He thanked him profusely and asked for his name, thinking he'd burned a pile of money for the poor guy once he returned to the world of the living. The pair exchanged effusive words of friendship as Moran helped the man spread out the paper and grind the ink. But as soon as they set to work, everything screeched to a halt. My Shizun, Moran balled his hand into a fist and drummed it against his knee several times, but didn't manage to drum up a single spark of inspiration. He hesitated for a long while, sifting through every word in his pitiful vocabulary. At last he managed to squeeze out, He's beautiful. Please draw him. Oh, Moran. This is not gonna go well. And I think I need to go soon, but let's just do maybe one more page? Yeah, one more page. The scholar stared. Well, draw. There was a long pause. Beautiful in what way? Isn't it obvious? Just, beautiful. So draw him beautiful. Oh no. Yes, I know draw him beautiful, but you know what, never mind. What kind of face does he have? What kind of face? Moran stared blankly. After some thought, he said, a face is a face. He's really just giving this man nothing to work with. The scholar was beginning to get irked. Oval, heart, square, round. At least give me a shape. I don't know these things. Anyway, he has a handsome face. The scholar was rendered speechless once again. Forget it, Moran said. If you don't know, then just draw it like my face. Our faces are shaped pretty similarly anyway. The scholar gave up on speaking altogether. Next were the eyes. What kind of eyes? Just as Moran was about to answer, the scholar added, Do not say eyes or eyes. Come on, you've been describing it in your head this entire time. Phoenix-shaped eyes. I have no idea what that means, even though I kind of have a thought about it. But you have the words, just find them. I know, Moran waved a hand. His eyes look, how do I put it? Scary but charming? And cold but gentle. The scholar flung down his brush in a rage. I quit. Go find someone else. No, wait! Moran grabbed him hastily. No one else draws as well as you do. The scholar glared at him and barely contained his anger. But Moran's face shone with sincerity, so he relented and said stiffly, Very well. But you have to give me a proper answer. Moran felt a little wronged. He thought his answers were perfectly fine. What about them hadn't been proper? But beggars couldn't be choosers. He nodded obediently and hung the soul-calling lantern close. Hugged, sorry. there's an image on the page, and I need to show it to you guys. I'm gonna do one more page, cause the image that we're about to read Moran conjure up for this poor artist is hilarious. Just look at that. Just look at that and tell me that whatever description is about to follow is not going to be an absolute disaster. Please tell me you guys can see that. I really hope you can. So, the eyes. The scholar got back down to business. Leopard eyes, round eyes, almond eyes, phoenix eyes, or Rand's head was spinning under the barrage of unfamiliar terms. He shook his head. Slit eyes? No, that's way too small. His eyes were upturned. I don't know what that's called, but they swoop upward really prettily. That's what phoenix eyes are. Good to know. Thank you for that clarification. Moran opened his mouth, but seeing the scholar's face like thunderclouds ready to burst, promptly shut it again. All right. Slit eyes, whatever you say. The scholar continued his questioning. Nose, high or flat? High. Lips, thin or full? Thin. Eyebrows, dense or sparse? Dense. Thick or thin? Average. Wait. I know this one. He has sword straight brows. Fine. The scholar laid down a few brush strokes. Any birthmarks on his face? Moran tilted his head in thought. Then his face reddened as he mumbled, Yeah. Where? On his left ear, Moran said haltingly. A tiny little coloured mole, and he's so very sensitive when kissed there. Luckily he didn't say that part. But oh my word. The image that the illustration is showcasing versus what Moran just described is hilarious. Okay, so that is the end of today's reading. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We are going to be continuing with it on Thursday, same time, so 9 p.m. my time, 7 p.m. GMT. And yeah, I hope I will see you guys there. And I'm kind of really glad that even though I don't doubt that there are going to be a few more emotional moments before we reach the end of this, there are a lot more humorous moments at this point combined in my heartfelt moments, and I'm really appreciative of that. But yeah, again, hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. Zaijian.